Marcus, I want to start from the early days of Marcus Lattimore. How would you best describe Duncan, South Carolina to somebody like myself? How would you describe the people, the food, and just that part of the country?
Well, it's a special part of the country. It really is. Where I'm from, Duncan, it's a very small town. It's about 3,000 people. The high school that I went to, it's in District 5, and that's how we break up our school districts in District 1 all the way up. Duncan's a beautiful place. It really is. It's the prototypical southern small town, Friday night lights, everybody supporting the home team, good barbecue. Growing up in Duncan, it really is a kid's dream for one who loves athletics, who loves the game of football. All we had was a field. We had football. We played sports in Duncan. We produced athletes and a lot of amazing coaches. You know, I can vividly remember gathering with my friends at different areas within the city, we were doing one thing, and that was tossing the football around, scraping the knees, getting tackled in the sticky briars. It's a kid's dream. A lot of my memories have a lot to do with injuries and that theme kind of continued into my high school and college career. But I mean, I wouldn't want life any other way. I mean, we had a great time. I have a lot of friends from the 90s that are still my friends today as we're closing in on 30 years old.
Isn't that amazing how you could have friends for that long? I mean, it's incredible that you meet somebody, you're playing around, the next thing you know, you're almost 30, and you're like, I've known you for 27 years.
And I think that's the benefit of growing up in a small town. That's one of the things that we take for granted is those lifelong relationships that we build. We played football all the way up in middle school, in high school, and I was blessed enough to play with a childhood friend in college. Growing up in a small town and the importance and the value of having a community behind you. It's special. We won a lot of games because of our crowd. There was nothing for us to have 2,000, 3,000 people at a high school game. I'm forever grateful and I cherish those memories.
You guys probably had more fans at your high school football games than the Detroit Lions get at their National Football League games.
And you know what? That's not an exaggeration. Our, our, our junior year, we were playing our crosstown rival. There were 25,000 people within that stadium. The stadium only sat 5,000. You relish those opportunities. You soak in that moment. Life was just fun. Life was a lot of fun growing up in a small town.
Duncan kind of has that Friday Night Lights vibe. Was that something when you were a little kid, you went to those high school games and you could envision yourself on the field?
I didn't only go to the high school games, I wore the jerseys of the high school players that were playing. It creates this spirit inside of you that says, I can't wait to put on that jersey. I can't wait to be a part of that. Our high school coach at the time, Bobby Bentley, he created that type of spirit. From the time we were 7 years old all the way until we got to high school, we were running the same plays in Little League, in middle school. We were called the Little Rebels. He created a sense of this is important. Come be a part of this. And it was just natural for us to fall right into that lineage. And we did. And we just respected the legacy of the Burns Rebels. And that's something that has kind of been in me a long time.
You know, I find it amazing that coming from the state of South Carolina, you don't have any professional franchises. The closest thing you have Clemson, University of South Carolina. So I find it really cool that when you're a little kid, you're not wearing an NFL jersey. You're putting on that Burns High School jersey of the kids that are maybe 10 years older than you. Me growing up in Orange County, California, that never happened. And I think that's what makes where you grew up so interesting.
It means so much to us. And I think because we weren't exposed to a lot, that was our entertainment. That was our recreation. It was our sport. It was our love. It was our everything. And the community rallied around us. It was just something that we knew that was important at a young age. We came together how important it was for us to be a part of that lineage. It was ingrained into our head at a very young age. To be a Burns rebel, you had to operate a certain way. It's memories I can tell my kids one day.
When you put on that jersey for the first time as a player, as a 14, 15-year-old, what did that feel like? Because for so many years, you're wearing somebody else's jersey, and now for the first time, you get to pull on that Burns jersey for yourself, and you're going out on the field. You're running downhill, mowing guys over.
A dream. A dream is really the only way to describe it, because I wasn't looking forward to college. I was looking forward to being a Burns rebel. My heroes, Will Corn, a guy that played at Clemson, had a very interesting career in college, but he was my hero growing up. Prince Miller, another guy born and raised in Duncan, South Carolina. My hero growing up went to play at the University of Georgia. Everett Dawkins, Florida State University. All of these guys I watched ever since I was a little kid. And, even my brother played at the same high school. It created that you just wanted to be a part of that because your role models were doing the same thing. And they influenced us so much. They would show up at our elementary schools and read to us. They would show up at our middle schools and give us talks. They were our North Stars. They guided us, and we just wanted to be a part of that.
When you started having success on the football field, Marcus, you were South Carolina's Mr. Football. You played in the U.S. Army All-American Bowl in 2010. When you started having that success and you saw kids wearing your jersey, how did that make you feel?
It's surreal. Doesn't feel real. It's cool. You don't know how to respond in those types of situations. When it first initially started, I was a little bit afraid. I didn't want that big of a responsibility on my shoulders. You grow up in South Carolina, you kind of get used to it if you're excelling on the football field. So it just becomes a part of who you are. And I knew that I was following in the lineage of the guys that I looked at, the guys' jerseys that I wore, and they bared that responsibility. So why couldn't I? And they did a great job with it. And I knew my purpose in life then was to be a good role model and show kids how to get to this level. And at that time, just being very naive and young, I thought life was all about football. I knew the impact that I could make through football. That's something I completely understood, but I thought life was about football. It opened the door, that experience of having people look at you as somebody to look up to. It opened the door to a whole new world. I can say that.
Do you think, though, Marcus, with that much responsibility comes unrealistic expectations? You're a teenager, you're in high school, and although it is cool that kids look up to you, and I think we briefly discussed this when we spoke a few weeks ago, unrealistic expectations and people assuming that, and I'm guilty of this too, looking at athletes, looking at them as if they're a superhero 24/7, 7 days a week, when in reality, once you're done on the football field and you go home, you could have the similar things going on that somebody like myself would have.
I believe that's the biggest downfall, that people put their hope into 17 and 18-year-olds. People depend on them to entertain, to be a good role model, to be a good citizen. You're expected to be perfect in a sense. We all know that if you're human, that's impossible. But at the same time, with a young mind at that age, you're going to do everything in your power to put your best foot forward. All right. So if you have to put on a facade and pretend as if everything's okay, that's what you're going to do. If you have to put on a front to try and make people believe that you're okay, I mean, that's what you're going to do, because you have this idea that society has put you in a box. This is who you are. This is only who you can be. And you're looked at in a certain light. You're looked at in such a positive light that if anybody is to see a flaw or a weakness, or you make a mistake, you feel like the world is crumbling around you. And that's a dangerous spot for a young man to be in who's getting a lot of attention in high school or in college, because that leads to him covering up some things that he doesn't like about himself, or some things that he may struggle with, or not having the courage uh, to cry or show his emotions. I think that's dangerous.
Do you think that you had that much pressure? Because Marcus, you're one of the most decorated high school athletes in the entire state of South Carolina and the entire country. I remember we're the same age. I remember reading about you, and I would always think to myself as a 16 and 17-year-old, this is so cool. But I only looked at it through that lens of that superhero lens. I never looked at it from the other side, that if you mess up, or if one thing happens, then everyone's just going to jump on you and you think the world's going to come to an end, like you said.
And that's when the mask develops. It develops at that young age when you live in this light, when you live with this idea that you can't make mistakes. You have to be perfect. You have to be on all the time. People have a certain perception of you, and you must match their perception. I dealt with that pressure. I dealt with that struggle. I vividly remember being in high school because I just wanted to be normal so bad. Just because you could run a football well does not mean that you're not human. Humans deal with an array of different emotions, and so do football players, maybe even more, just because of the pressure that they're getting from their coaches. But on 4th of July, it was around 4th of July, I don't remember the exact date, but my friends and I, we were hanging out. We had some fireworks. I decided to pop a firework in school. What I've realized now, 12 years later, that was just an act of rebellion. I wanted to be normal. I was conditioned to pretend as if everything was okay when I just wanted to blend in. I just wanted to blend in with my friends and be a regular dude. And I didn't think too much about it after the incident happened, but my high school coach called me. And once my high school coach called me and my mom called me at the same time, I knew there was a problem. I knew I was in big trouble. My mom told me to come home. My coach was sitting on my couch. He said, there's a possibility that you might be expelled from school just from that act. And I broke down. I was yelling, I was crying, I was screaming. I said, I do not want this responsibility anymore. I do not want to play football anymore. I'm sick of trying to be this perfect guy. Again, 12 years later, I realized that I just wanted to fit in. I didn't want that responsibility, but it was on me. It was on me, and I had to learn and figure out a way to deal with it. And through a lot of ups and downs and mistakes, I think that things have worked out okay, but my need to put my best foot forward when I was around strangers or fans, I guess you could call them fans at that time, my need to be who they wanted me to be was overpowering my emotions, and it led to a lot more mistakes later on in my life. But I realized at that moment, that my life was going in a different way. The trajectory of my life was headed in a very different direction, and I had to be prepared for it.
Why did you continue playing football? When you had that moment breaking down in front of your mom and your high school football coach, why did you continue to go?
My high school coach, Coach Bobby Bentley, who's now the tight end coach at the University of South Carolina, gave me a statement. And he said, look, the Lord wouldn't put too much on you if you couldn't bear it. At that time, that really spoke to me. It basically said to myself that I can handle this. I can handle this responsibility. Another thing he said, it wasn't going to slow down. You're only going to receive more attention. You're only going to receive more praise and more criticism that comes with it. And, it's just the life of somebody in the public spotlight. He was a great role model for me throughout that time because I did struggle. I struggled with accepting the fact that this was my new life, a life full of attention. I didn't care too much about the attention. I just wanted to play football with my boys.
It's crazy to think that all you wanted to do, you alluded to earlier, was just blend in, be the everyday person. Wake up, if you mess up a little bit, no one cares. I mean, let's face it, we're all teenagers. We all do stupid things at one point in time. I've lost track of how many dumb things I did as a teenager, and that's the sole reason why my parents have so many wrinkles on their faces. It's hard because when you're that young, I mean, you're still developing, right? Physically, mentally, and you're relying on parents, football coaches, and in some respect, like these strangers, when at the end of the day, you don't need to listen to them, but how else would you know?
It's a dangerous way to live, especially if you don't have the tools and know how to express your emotions. If you don't know how to express your emotions, which most kids don't at that age, it can lead to very destructive habits that you develop. I'm a life coach at Lewis and Clark now. I see those same patterns developing. My whole job is to inform them and educate them on, what it's like if you're unaware. If you're unaware of who you are, if you're unaware of these certain things that pop up within your life, you wouldn't know at that age. You're really learning on the fly. That's one thing that I vowed as an adult not to do. Not learn on the fly. Learn from others' mistakes. A wise man learns from others' mistakes. A knowledgeable man learns from his mistakes. And that's what I'm shooting for in my life, is just to, be that voice of reason for guys who are trying to figure out all of these different complex emotions that we deal with and all these different situations in life that bring us just so much despair.
It's hard to navigate life. And I don't think anyone could ever prepare you for that. Unfortunately, on my side, there have been some family things that happened. And as a 17, 18-year-old, I had no clue what to do. I acted out in some destructive ways that weren't good. And, looking back on it, back then, what else are you supposed to do? But looking back on it as an almost 30-year-old, I'm like, wow, really? Like, I couldn't have handled that in a more mature manner. But when you don't know, and you just go with your gut instinct. And I think what you're doing now is more important than what these kids are doing on the football field.
I mean, you brought up a good point about, just being at that age. I mean, studies have shown, in particular with males, the brain is not developed until you're 25. You couple impulsive actions with sexual hormones, with attention from people that you don't even know. That's not a good cocktail, not a good recipe for success and production in life. It's a recipe for disaster, particularly when you're not educated on what you're doing. Again, like you mentioned, what I'm trying to do right now is to educate those potential pitfalls that come with success, that come with playing football, with any sport that involves you getting attention.